Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Malu Dumim in Israel. We are creatures of beliefs. We may not like to be defined by our beliefs, but that is who we are. As living things whose dominant function in life is to think in one way or another, those beliefs have come to be almost like a blueprint for how we see the world and understand our place within it. It is those beliefs that guide us in what we want and what we choose in the course of our lives, and also that instruct us in how we are to go about living our lives. Beliefs are the software of the brain. Beliefs, of course, should not be restricted to the religious variety, although that is precisely what many people consider them to be. There are religious beliefs, such as belief in God or belief in life after death, but there are countless other beliefs that either have nothing to do with religion or are shared by religious and non-religious frameworks alike. Among the latter are beliefs about morality, such as what is truly good and what is truly evil. Among the former are things like numbers or words or inclinations about what will happen in the future or what did happen in the past. We may not think of numbers or words as beliefs, but that is exactly what they are. They do not exist in any palpable form. They are only there in our minds. We believe them to be real, and so they are. Beliefs are so fundamental to human life that it is almost impossible to imagine what it would be like to be without them. This would be the mind of a newborn baby, innocent of beliefs and ready to be shaped by them. It is a kind of bliss, but also something that none of us would willingly go back to. As the mind fades with dementia or other brain deteriorating conditions, beliefs fade with it. Or perhaps they linger on as shadows of their former selves, no longer consciously playing a role in the thought process, but nevertheless steering around whatever it is that still remains there. Beliefs can be tremendously beneficial for us. They guide us through life and death, through love and hatred, through good and evil. They enable us to become genuine human beings with a conscience. They inspire us with motivation, and they facilitate the perseverance that grants us the power to accomplish things in the course of our lives. But they can also be extremely detrimental at times. They may hold us back when we should be seizing the moment, or they may fixate us with a certain mindset when we should be more open to change. They are a double-edged sword, which when wielded right can move mountains, but when misused can lead to paralysis. We gain our beliefs throughout the course of our lives, sometimes without even being aware of it. They may come unconsciously while reading a book or watching a movie or even sleeping. They may be the result of conscious thought, hammered out over discussions with others or working things out to ourselves. We may get them from religious sources, and we may get them from comic books. They are always available to be gleaned and can be thrown away when deemed outdated. A book like the Bible is positively loaded with beliefs. They are there on every page, within every story, and even between the words. A religion like Judaism is also packed with them, some as old as the Bible and others which were picked up during the Holocaust. Among the many beliefs found in both the Bible and in Judaism is the foundational idea that the Israelite people, who became the Jews, were forged as a nation in the course of the long period of slavery and suffering in Egypt. That a nation would want to believe that its origins are traced to such humiliating conditions is itself remarkable. But they are firmly embedded in the Bible and in Jewish tradition. A corollary to this belief is the flip side, that we were redeemed from slavery in Egypt by no less than God. The plagues and the Exodus and the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai are as solid to believing Jews as evolution is to a biologist. These are the events that the upcoming holiday of Passover revolves around. They are recounted during the Seder and a recurring theme in prayers. They are also the subject of part of this week's Torah reading. The regular Parsha is called Pekudei. It deals with the final construction of the Mishkan and culminates with the erecting of the entire structure and the completion of the book of Exodus. We're not going to discuss this Parsha in this podcast, as important as it may be. Instead, we will discuss the additional reading for this week, known as Parashat HaChodesh. That name refers to a series of verses that are read on the Shabbat that falls right before the month in which the holiday of Passover occurs. That month is called Nisan, and this Shabbat is the day before the month begins. This particular section describes the initiation of the Israelites into the very first Passover, which took place during the final days of the Israelites' long stay in Egypt. In fact, the verses of this section describe the initial events of the Exodus before it ever happened. It begins following the end of the ninth plague, the plague of darkness. Pharaoh had been warned many times to let the Israelites go and visited with a series of devastating plagues. Due to his own personality and to a certain divinely imposed stubbornness, he refused each time. With God's speech to Moshe and Aaron in these verses, the Israelites are told how the end would finally come about. It begins with the declaration that this month would be the first month of the future Jewish calendar. This is why it is called Parashat HaChodesh, which means the Parsha of the month. But that detail is almost incidental. It is what follows that would determine Israelite and Jewish destiny and their fundamental beliefs. They are told to prepare a lamb or a goat to be slaughtered and eaten on the night of the final plague. They are to place blood from this animal on their doorposts as a sign that this is an Israelite house and is immune to the coming plague. There are certain details concerning how to prepare and eat the animals, but the main thing is that they are to be eaten in a state of readiness to leave. The animal and the meal is called for the first time the Pesach, or Passover, in advance commemoration of what will happen next. Hashem will pass through Egypt with the explicit intent of killing all the firstborn of the Egyptians. This is the final plague and the one that would finally convince Pharaoh and the Egyptians that the game was up. Hashem would pass over the Israelite houses since they had the blood on the doorposts. This night and this meal were to be relived throughout the rest of Israelite and Jewish history. It was the beginning of the nation and the event which forged their destiny. In addition, there are commandments to eat matzah for the 7 days, which would constitute the future celebration. There must be no leavened products in the house. This was to become the defining feature of the holiday in the future. Eating matzah to the exclusion of all leavened products, since this was what the Israelites did on their way out of Egypt. It is all a commemoration of that first Passover, but it allowed and still allows all future generations of Israelites and Jews to relive it as if it happened to them. There are certain required beliefs in all of this that many Jews find difficult to accept. Among them are the basic idea that it all happened in this way. On top of that is the astounding idea that God was behind it all, making it happen and being right there on the scene, killing the Egyptian firstborn. These beliefs are too much for many Jews, and they go along with the meal and the traditional rituals only because it helps them keep their Jewish identity and grants them an anchor to an ancient religion. But whether the belief is fully there or not, the commemoration has an effect. It reaffirms the covenant that began around 4,000 years ago. Let's look at one detail of that story, the killing of the firstborn. This strikes many people today as unnecessarily cruel. Was this really necessary? Couldn't God have simply waved his magic wand and brought the Israelites out without all this killing? It's a fair question. The answer is that it had to come from the Egyptians. They had to acknowledge God's invincible power. They had to allow the Israelites to leave on their own volition. This is also part of the story. It is not simply a grand miracle which changed the course of Israelite history and to some degree the fate of the world. It took place in the full glare of history with human beings making choices and bearing the consequences. If such a situation were to happen today, in which people had to take matters into their own hands and go so far as to kill others who were oppressing them, many people would be reluctant to do so. They might insist that things should be worked out by sincere discussion and compromises from both sides. They might have major trouble with the idea that people have to be killed in order to bring about the freedom of some other group. They certainly would have a problem with the idea that God was commanding all of this, let alone that God was making it happen. They would very likely reject that God as some ruthless tyrant who kills anyone who gets in his divine way. But this is the story. It is dramatic and it is harsh, but it had to be done. There may have been Israelites who didn't want to go along with all of this. They may have voiced the refrain that is so familiar today in one form or another. That's not who we are. We don't kill or slaughter people. We don't threaten to kill the firstborn of the nation oppressing us, and we certainly don't actually do it. These are reasonable arguments, but they unquestionably go against the sentiments of the Passover story. That story shaped the destiny of the Israelites and the Jews. It couldn't have happened any other way. That attitude of that's not who we are is a belief. It tends to be a rather strong belief because it is very personal. It is very hard to dismiss once it is set in, since it is very much a part of the person who expresses it. But it is important to recognize that it is a belief and not a fact. When we are confronted with such choices today, whether national or personal, we have to recognize that making a choice based on that's not who we are may be an example of a belief holding us back. We may find the choice difficult to accept, but it may be necessary nevertheless. Sometimes we have to do things that go against who we think we are. This may be the only way of making the changes necessary to forge a new destiny. Such a choice was made to bring about the Exodus, because that was the only way it could have taken place. When destiny-shaping possibilities are before us, a belief of that's not who we are may hold us back from seizing the moment. Shabbat Shalom.